And a good Friday night, everyone. Thanks for joining for this Tropics After Dark. Of course, we're still tracking Hurricane Ida out there in the, just coming off of Cuba. And we want to thank our partners, as always, is floodproofing.com, one of our original partners from a couple of years ago. That they are back with us for this video, and so we always thank our partners and our sponsors, floodproofing.com. Visit their website and their Facebook page, give them a like over there, and check out their products that they offer. I want to always thank them, our partners on this page. So, of course, we're still tracking Ida tonight. We do have, obviously, what I've been telling you all for the last couple of days is, we'll still see little shifts back and forth east and west, but I kept saying let's wait for it to cross Cuba and see what happens with the storm. Well, it it actually crossed Cuba now earlier around 6:25. It actually made landfall across the western side of Cuba there, and now it's emerging off of Cuba now back into the Gulf of Mexico. So now this is where things will get really interesting, as now we have the storm that's not quite all the way off. You can see some of it still kind of hanging there on the on the coast of Cuba there, right here, like the back portion of it. So it's possible some of that inflow right now is still not able to really manifest itself as it will be, because remember the inflow coming in a little bit there, so it's still dealing with a little bit of a land mass. But this thing is very well structured still. Probably not the best news, as I was hoping that maybe Cuba would do something to it, but it's didn't. It's still hanging at 80 miles per hour. The winds did not decrease at all. The structure, some of the deep convection decreased a bit. You can see at the beginning of the loop there, we do have the kind of the black and whites showing the stronger, cooler tops. But then as it comes on the island back into the water there, you can see them kind of disappear a little bit. It's probably temporary right now because the structure is very well formed still. You can see this kind of curl to it right here, and that's the sign of a very healthy system still. And the National Hurricane Center did note that, by the way, on their discussion. They had they had mentioned that the inner core of Ida did remain intact after its passage over western Cuba, with a well-defined eye and a relatively symmetric eye wall evident. So satellite images are showing deep convection increasing in both intensity and coverage. It shows them that obviously this is a sign that Ida is strengthening still. Now that it's back into the Gulf, it's able to strengthen from right now all the way into landfall, and I don't really see anything that's gonna stop it there. Jamie, just give me a second to talk about that for a second, because I noticed that too, and it can be a little bit deceiving, because I know you said Margaret had said landfall is a 3 instead of a 4, and that's really not true, and I'll explain to you in just a second. Let's take a look at the latest cone, and let me show you what's going on with that, okay? And let me show you why. And I've had frustrations with the National Hurricane Center, in the past, because they do this sometimes. But first and foremost, let me show you what we have here. It is still, forecast at this point, out here in the out here in the Gulf to be a Category 4, 140 miles per hour, gust up to about 165 miles per hour. Okay, so they didn't bump up the intensity. They kept it at 140. That was from earlier. Okay, so it didn't decrease, but it also didn't increase. So, but 140 is still a it's a formidable hurricane, right? It's not like that's nothing to, that's big. But I guess in a little bit of good news, they didn't increase it up to like 145 or 150. At least they kept it at, at least they kept it at 140, right? It's still big though. But let me show you here, because I know we'll have some questions about that, because I did see Margaret, posted that it's supposed to be a Category 3 at landfall instead of a 4. And it's not quite accurate, because if you look at the, the forecast cone and what's going on here, zooming in a little bit, and again, I don't like when the National Hurricane Center does this, but this point right here is actually inland a bit, and you can kind of confirm that if you go back to the National Hurricane discussion, because I wanted to pull this up because I figured there might be some questions about it. 140 is what we looked at just now, but the 125, they pointed out that is an inland point. So what's happening is it's inland a bit, and it's decreasing because obviously it's dealing with some land interaction at that point. So it can be deceiving at that, but if you do zoom in on it, you can see that this point is still 125, gusting to about 155. Keep in mind, still very strong. It's a strong Cat 3, still nearly a Cat 4. Remember, 130 is Cat 4, okay? this will decrease probably to 125, but only because it's interacting with the land there and it's inland a bit. So it's not quite accurate that it's not going to make landfall as a 4, because remember, if this is the frustration I have sometimes in National Hurricane Center, I always think they should have a point right here before landfall to show what it is going to be at landfall. And I think that if we had a point right here, or, well, more like what, right here, that this would still be at 140 category 4, right? Because the shelf waters there just offshore are actually like 87 or 88 degrees. So we're still talking about water that is very warm, and that won't have any impact on it. Maybe it'll deal with some shear and some dry air at the end, but I don't see why it would decrease to 125, and that's why I noticed that too, and I'm like, wait, that doesn't make sense. And I looked at it, and I kind of realized what was happening there. This point is inland, and so down here would be the landfall. It comes in a little bit onto land, starts interacting with the land a little bit, and then it decreases a little bit only because it's in a little bit. So please don't say, don't think at this point that if you see the cone, it says 4 and then 3, and it looks like it's at landfall, but it's really not. I still think this probably is going to be a category 4 at landfall, and of course decreasing as we, as it moves inland a little bit, and that's the reason why we're seeing that decrease right there. So keep that in mind. Please don't be complacent with this, because you see now it's a 4 and a 3. It's really not. I think it's still a 4 at landfall. But look, even if it was 125, no, that's still close to a Cat 4. Okay, so let's not get complacent with this right now. And there's a chance it's even higher than that, right? We have to still see what this thing does as it gets into this very conducive environment for for strengthening. Oh, JJ, I'm not realizing you probably don't know who Margaret is. Margaret Orr, she works for WDSU. I actually used to work with her at WDSU for 3 years. She's the chief meteorologist over there. She's great. She's been there for I think 35 or 40 years now. So, she's great. But yeah, that's who Margaret is. She works there at WDSU here in New Orleans. So anyway, let's see what's going on elsewhere. All right, so let's go back to the infrared loop. Obviously, this organization of the storm is still intact. I didn't see if we had any kind of, at this point, it's not evident that we have any kind of center relocations happening. I mean, I think the center is still somewhere in here. At this point, it's a pretty, pretty simple track that's going to happen here, right? There's not a lot of variables to it. We're still looking at this thing. Obviously, these were the latest models that they used to kind of help form the cone for the 10 p.m. model. And, what we see is right, we have this high pressure that's over here to the east of the system. And basically this storm is going to be riding along it. Now, there is a little bit of divergence toward the end here, right? It does fan out a little bit, so that still shows that there is a little bit of margin for error there. And I think it's going to have a lot to do with the forward motion of this storm, and let's keep an eye on that as we move forward. Now, at some point as we get toward the end here, we are going to see a slowdown of this closer to landfall, because it's going to start rounding that high. And like I mentioned earlier, just like a car making a turn, it does slow down a little bit when it makes that turn, and that's where the concern comes in to see a lot of rainfall, especially on the on the right side of this. So but look, also keep in mind with this, okay, now if this storm continues pretty quickly and maybe a little bit quicker than anticipated, then this thing could go a little bit more to the west. If it slows down a little bit more, meanders a little bit slower, that'll give time for that trough up here to dip down and nudge that high to the east, and then you might see tracks that swing a little bit more east. So I'm telling you here, although we do have a lot of confidence in the next 24 to 48 hours, there still is some divergence there at the end. And that's why if you look back at the Hurricane Center's cone here, we still do have a little bit of, it's a little bit wide at the end. It has narrowed down, of course. But still, look, I mean, if this thing, let's just say it doesn't take the center, but more of this, let's say it takes the eastern side of the track. Well, I mean, this was obviously, if it takes the extreme eastern part, this would totally increase the impacts over here in Biloxi, Mobile, Pensacola, right? If it takes the extreme eastern portion of the track. If it takes the middle portion of the track, well, I mean, closer to the coast down here, obviously the impact close to the coast, the Cat 4 probably making landfall, and that puts all these areas east of the center, and the weather's going to be really nasty there, okay? I'll go into some of the details and some of the some of the different impacts that we might feel east of the center. But if it takes the westernmost track here, well, then obviously Lafayette, Acadiana, right? All this area here, and in Baton Rouge, that would put you on the eastern side. So we're not quite locked in yet. I still want to see the next few hours to see what happens. The storm has come off Cuba now. It's in that little bit of somewhat recovery mode. I want to see if that center stays intact and what happens still in the next few hours. This was that time period I said I was waiting for. That one variable that was left was Cuba. So let's see what happens. Now it's back over the Gulf, and let's see how it consolidates and how it forms in the next few hours or so as we go overnight and into tomorrow morning. That's when I'll make my decision. Our family will make our decision about leaving or not. I mean, right now I'm kind of leaning towards getting out of here only because I don't like what it's looking like. I know most of you know I'm located around Kenner, right? And if you don't know where Kenner is, well, a lot of folks maybe not know it. It's what, somewhere around here. So as this thing would bend around my area, right? I mean, this would put the center in this, and we'd be right in that right front quadrant. So not something that you kind of want to stick around for something that's going to be a possible Category 4. Close to the coast, right? Definitely not an ideal forecast for this area. So we're still weighing it and seeing what it's going to do. But right now, kind of erring on the side of being cautious with that, right? You don't want to mess around with something like this. So let's take a look here at some of the most recent advisories. I'm sure if that thing went off again, the phone scared the heck out of me again just a few minutes ago with some kind of storm surge warning, I think. But all the areas in purple are under hurricane warnings, okay? So these are issued from the National Hurricane Center. So keep in mind, look, the center's going to be coming in, but look at all the folks who are under hurricane warnings. This is going to be a big storm. The wind field's going to be big. It's going to expand as we get a little bit closer. So that means the hurricane force winds are going to expand out a bit, right? This is not going to be one of those lopsided eastern stack systems, that we see where the western side is dead. It's not this. This is going to be a classic buzzsaw look hurricane that has impacts on both sides. So the hurricane force winds are going to expand out a bit, and you're going to see that potential for seeing hurricane force winds even going up past north of Baton Rouge, okay? So folks watching in Baton Rouge, even over toward Lafayette, you have the potential to see some hurricane force winds here, even west of the system. So although you won't get the center, and stress this, you don't have to be in the center to see impacts from this storm. This is going to be a one of those storms that have far-reaching impacts. All the red areas, by the way, folks in Lake Charles, and there's a lot of them, tropical storm conditions possible over there. You're under a tropical storm warning. Remember, the wind field expands. Hurricane force winds, tropical storm force winds are going to expand even out a little bit more. And then for the areas to the north there, we have tropical storm watches, in effect. Storm surge warnings, right? All the areas in that deep pink color, we do have storm surge warnings. Storm surge watches are going to be the areas in the lighter pink that are less likely to see life-threatening inundation. But as we're looking at these totals here, remember these came up from earlier or from yesterday when we were looking at potential Category 2 high end. Now we're looking at the potential for 10 to 15 feet of water above ground here. Along the coast. And we're also looking at 7 to 11 feet on that dreaded right angle geography over there of Mississippi and Louisiana when you have water kind of piling in, as the storm comes in. And all these totals, by the way, will probably happen, at different times as the storm's coming in. Because if you think about, as the storm's coming in from like this direction, the center's down here, at that point is probably where you're going to have that counterclockwise rotation, and that'll be pushing that water in. That's probably the time where that 7 to 11 feet will come in over there. Now, at landfall, when this thing's coming in like this somewhere is, you have a center, that'll be the push of water in this area all along the coast here, the 10 to 15 feet. And when it's down here a little bit, you have the counterclockwise flow around the north side, and that'll probably be pushing in here in Vermilion Bay, and those areas will get that push of water. So it's going to happen at different times. And also keep in mind, with Lake Pontchartrain, as the storm is down here moving up, you'll have the south wind across the lake, pushing these totals on the northern end of Lake Pontchartrain, and that's where that 4 to 7 feet will come in. But then as the storm moves in this direction to the north, then your winds shift out of the northwest and push the lake waters down toward the south shore, and then you'll have the water coming back in that direction. So it's going to happen at different times, but with the storm this big, we're going to have a lot of water rise around several areas, and they might all happen at different times, because some folks will have offshore flow, onshore flow, and it's just going to be a matter of where the winds are, pushing water at different times. So, with a Category 4 and a storm that's likely going to expand in size, that's going to just bring a push of water. Remember, I don't like, obviously we hear the name Katrina, right? We all remember Katrina. It's a Cat 3, right? It's a Category 3 storm. But what I always remember is, I talked to Jim Cantori after Katrina, and one thing he always told me kind of stuck with my mind. We had a storm. Katrina was in the Gulf, obviously. From it blossomed in. It was 175. It was huge in the Gulf, right? It got up to a Cat 5, but at landfall it was only a 3. But it brought the surge of a 5. It brought the surge of if there was a 6, right? It was like 28 feet in some points. And what Jim told me is, it was something I always remembered. It's like when you put your arm, in a bathtub that's full and you start shaking the water in. Consider that was the time where you have like a Cat 5 Katrina. You're shaking the water, and then you pull your arm out. Well, the water is still going to be churning, right? Even after you pull your arm out. And so that's kind of what he told, kind of one thing he explained to me at the time. It was a long time ago after Katrina, where, if you have a hurricane at one point that's a Cat 5 and huge, but decreases toward the end, it still could bring the surge, of a 5. Same exact thing happened over there with Ike in Galveston, where it was a Category 2 at landfall, but brought the surge of a Category 4. Same type of thing. So with this one, if it's going to get up to a Category 4 in the Gulf, which is, very likely at this point, could it get stronger? If it's a 4 or a 5 or whatever it ends up being, it's going to be big. Remember, it's going to bring all that water with it as it comes in. So surge is absolutely absolutely going to be a big threat with this system. There's so many different threats coming with this at landfall. Surge is obviously going to be, most prevalent here closer to the coast. But remember, the Louisiana coastline is barely there anymore down here. So, we have a push of water coming in, and who knows how far, we're going to get it coming in here, because from, remember Isaac came in something like this. So the push of water was kind of from a different direction, right? This is one, I don't recall one recently, obviously, coming in from this trajectory, but this comes in more from the south. And so this push of water is from a different direction. So I'm not quite certain that Louisiana coastline has been tested from this direction just yet. Because even Katrina was going to be a different direction. Remember, from Katrina coming in east of the area, that brought kind of a north wind and an east wind. This is going to bring more of a south wind. And I don't know if the Louisiana coastline has been tested like this from this direction with a storm this big. This storm, obviously, we don't have storms that are like this very often. So that kind of concerns me a little bit. That is a concern for me personally, living around the Kenner area, that I just don't know the type of, the geography's tricky around here, and water makes its way in all kinds of different ways. So this is a different direction that it's going to be coming in, and I just don't know if we've been tested from this direction, from this size hurricane and this potential height of surge. So that is something that concerns me a little bit personally, living in this area. Something else that we have to watch, obviously is going to be the rainfall on top of the potential surge numbers. And this is, so look, obviously this area in red, like I tell you with every storm, that this is the flash flooding potential map. If we're going to see flash flooding due to rainfall, it's going to be in this red area and then stretching up yellow, and green, right? The red is the most likely, and this is why. These are the kind of the projections for rainfall across the area, and you add these areas in, especially close to the coast there, when you combine it with surge and the rainfall, we might have some big issues on our hands. So this pink area here, is going to be 15 to 20 inches of rainfall. And I'm hoping that doesn't verify, but with a system that's going to be slowing down a little bit at landfall, and all those different bands that are going to be moving in, well, the totals can start to accumulate. So 15 to 20 inches of rainfall across southeast Louisiana in some spots is obviously concerning. And then this red area around it, that's still 10 to 15 inches of rainfall. So lots of rain is going to fall. And then this orange, by the way, up here into Jackson, Mississippi, over and toward Mobile, across the Mississippi Gulf Coast, that's also 6 to 10 inches. And that stretches over here as well. So lots of rainfall. We're going to have to watch for those bands as they set up to see, if we're going to have those bands set up that drop the rain over and over again because they come in from the south to the north, but they don't move too much, right? Because as this thing gets the northern trajectory, as it turns and makes that bend and starts moving north, remember the bands are going to move north with it. They're not going to go east and west. They're going to fall into the same spot over and over again, and that's where you can get that flash flooding potential. We're going to have to watch that at landfall, and we're going to have to watch it after landfall. As the rain falls north, it all flows back down, and that's where the river flooding can become an issue. So we have to watch the river levels with this as well. So lots of different hazards with this, moving in. It's just the nature of the beast, really, right? With these storms, and especially when you were dealing with a potential Category 4 storm at landfall, that becomes even more concerning. Okay, so let's take a look here at some of the potential hazards. This is a good map to use. Kind of shows you potential for winds, right? I know a lot of folks asked about what type of winds can I see. This kind of explains it a little bit. It's not the best map, but I find it pretty useful to kind of check out what's going on. Basically, in this purple area, right? I mean, I know this is kind of Captain Obvious material, but this purple area is the potential to see greater 110 miles per hour or greater. And that can come in the form of sustained winds, and it can come in the form of wind gust. But the area in purple is the most likely area to see 110 miles per hour or more. Obviously, if we have a Cat 4 at the coast, we're going to see that. But look at how it stretches to the north, and also look at how it stretches west there through Lafayette, right? And this goes also east into the New Orleans metro area. We see the potential is going to be there, whether it comes through the form of just wind gust or just sustained winds. This is the area that has a chance to see 110 miles per hour or more. Obviously, if we had like a power outage map, it would probably look like this, right? The area in that purple pink color is probably the most likely spot to see widespread power outages. The red area is the potential for 74 to 110 miles per hour. That would be Cat 1 to Cat 1, Cat 2. Hurricane force winds. The purple area is Cat 3 or more. And then that orange area is 58 to 73 miles per hour. So we're talking high tropical storm to just below hurricane strength. And then moving up north, we have the yellow, which is just 39 to 57 miles per hour. Okay, so that kind of gives you an idea of the potential to see, the winds. Obviously, I kind of explained this before. This was the greatest potential to see storm surge, and the area in purple is going to be your biggest threat to see the water, the inundation close to the coast. And then the flooding rain threat, kind of talked about this as well. It's basically the image we just looked at. That area in pink is the flash flooding risk, but then that area in red as well also has that risk. And then, like I mentioned earlier, there's more with this, right? The tornado threat. Always with a landfalling tropical system, you have the potential to see those bands and those, isolated tornadoes that can form in those bands. I expect by tomorrow, at some point, we will have a tornado watch issued for, basically probably about that area. So keep that in mind as well. It's the gift that keeps on giving. The tornado threat comes along with it. So this is how we could see the system evolve. I know I showed you all this earlier, but just to kind of, so you're not, so you're not surprised at what happens. So here's where we sit right now currently, about just coming off of Cuba. It kind of has that shape, and it looks like it could start developing again. So by the time we get into late tonight and going into early tomorrow morning, this is about 8 a.m., we probably start to see this thing really becoming more concentric, a little circle, right? Looking more like a classic hurricane. But it really starts to happen by tomorrow afternoon and early evening. At that point, we really start to see this thing taking shape. At that point, we may start to get that eye forming. That's by tomorrow afternoon, evening. And I'm so here's what I think is going to maybe happen. There may be some people weighing their decisions, me included, by the way. And then when they see the satellite tomorrow, midday, they're going to be like, okay, we're getting the hell out of here, because what we're going to see in the Gulf, they're going to be like, oh yeah, I'm not staying for this. And I think that may happen and make people's decisions form, right? This is tomorrow evening now at this point, and now we have a full-fledged hurricane there, in the Gulf, the Central Gulf of Mexico. And I really think at this point is when we see the thing start to really expand. It's going to be close to that loop current. It's going to be away from Cuba, all the land masses. It basically has the Gulf surrounding it, and it can do basically as it pleases with the low wind shear environment and the fuel as the warm water. So all the way at that point to landfall, we see the thing expand. By the time we get to landfall, it's a big hurricane, starts to expand a little bit, and we have obviously landfall along the Louisiana coast somewhere. Notice, though, obviously the worst spot to be in this, is right around the eye wall, obviously, but then stretching out in this northeastern quadrant. That does, if it takes a track like this, that puts the entire New Orleans metro area here, southeast Louisiana, in that very nasty portion of the storm. We would have widespread power outages, widespread wind damage, in this area if this track would hold. And then, of course, even stretching over here, you have the rain bands that are going to be flowing in and could cause some flash flooding issues depending on where they set up. And then this thing moves inland at that point. Now, look, keep this in mind too, okay? So this is like noon, or this is about 3 o'clock on Sunday, all right? So timing-wise, this is about 3 o'clock on Sunday, and then this is about 6 o'clock Sunday. So it's not moving very quickly, because now this is about 7 a.m. Monday here, all right? So it's still lingering. And then finally at this point we get into Monday afternoon and we start to get this thing out of here. But notice, even by Monday afternoon and evening, we could still have some bands over there along the Alabama-Florida coastline. So it's gonna hang around for a little while. Doesn't look like it's totally out of here. I mean, look at that. It still has some tail bending down. That's Tuesday afternoon. So gonna take a little while to get this thing out of here totally. That's that. This is the H-Wharf. You might have already seen this shared online, but it kind of shows you the evolution of this storm and how we could see it evolve. And I'm telling you, as we go into tomorrow, this is about where we stand right now. And looking just for some verification, that's a look live at Ida, and then we go back and it looks very similar, right? The initialization is pretty good. So we move this forward. This is about 6 a.m. getting its act together, becoming more circular, more concentric there. And then by noon tomorrow, looks like at that point, I bet you we're like, okay, it's starting. And then any minute now, boom, we get the circle, we get the buzzsaw. Now we have the full eye look by tomorrow night. And by, going into Sunday morning, it looks like a very, intimidating storm. And then we really have it by the time we get into Sunday morning. And at this point, by 6 a.m. on Sunday morning, hopefully everyone's prepared. They're gone at this point. They've gotten everything done, because this is when we're going to start to have the bands moving in. This is 6 a.m. and notice that even closer there at 6 a.m. Sunday, although the eye is offshore, well offshore still, we have the weather already moving to the north there, starting in southeast Louisiana, okay? So that's why I'm saying, if you're going to leave, if you're going to get everything prepared, you got to do it tomorrow. Because by the time Sunday comes, it's really gonna be too late, because the weather's gonna start to go downhill. It's gonna get pretty windy early on, and the bands are gonna start to move in early in the morning, most likely. So this is Sunday at 6 a.m. Notice how that thing still is intensifying, by the way, all the way to landfall. And this is Sunday at noon, and now we're getting hammered by bands, most likely. Along the eastern side, along the western side, the northern side. It's a full circle, okay? It's not going to be one that's weak on one side. This is a full concentric hurricane with plenty of impacts on all sides of it, right? Look at how that could look, right? And then by the time this is noon Sunday, this is 6 p.m. That's about when it looks like it's going to be making landfall on the coast. Is that going to be the exact location? I don't know. But you see where the worst of the bands are going to set up, the eastern and northern side there. Those nasty, nasty looking, just looks really bad there at landfall. It looks really strong as well. And then that's 6 p.m. Sunday, and that's midnight there, still looking like a decent-sized hurricane. At that point, it starts weakening by Sunday at midnight going into Monday, and then it really starts to weaken. But I want you to notice here, and this is where the flooding, my flooding concern with this comes in, because starting early on Sunday morning, notice, the rain probably starts moving in this area, and that's 6 a.m. Now, these are skipping 6 hours at a time. So think from when we skip this from right here until noon on Sunday. Remember, the bands have been coming in the entire time in this area, right? And so keep that in mind, because they haven't stopped probably on the eastern side. But now we go into 6 p.m. Sunday, and again, they haven't stopped on the eastern side, right? And now the storm goes more north at this point. So all these areas right here that have been receiving the rainfall continue to receive it. Even as the storm goes north, we're still on the eastern side, and there's probably still rainfall dropping on that side. So that is a lot of rain and probably not many breaks with a storm that's going to be filled out, most likely. And so that's the concern. And even going into late Sunday into Monday, maybe still seeing some rain, but at that point, it's starting to get a break around this area. But how much damage has been done at that point? Well, that remains to be seen. And then finally it moves up to the north. So I hope that kind of illustrates where the rainfall concern comes in for me. That is obviously maybe a secondary threat. The first threat is a storm surge, and obviously the winds that are going to cause, some pretty significant damage, right? And keep in mind, like I mentioned earlier, if y'all weren't with me, as that rain starts to come in early in the morning on Sunday, before the winds come in, you saturate the ground, and so the ground becomes very, very mushy, right? And so things aren't really sturdy in the ground anymore, and then the winds come after that, and that's where you get the trees falling and the power line issues. So anything that's sturdy, when the rain comes first before the wind, that causes, a lot of issues. So that's where the the concern comes in there as well. So rainfall is absolutely a pretty significant threat with this. This is a look at the wind field. I don't have this was the wind field at about 10 p.m. or 9 p.m. Central. It doesn't really help much. I mean, it kind of gives you an idea of the tropical storm force winds. They extend pretty far out, and the hurricane winds are small for now. But remember, that's going to extend. But I wish they gave us mileage, right? It's hard to really tell. So although the graphic is cool in theory, it's not really helpful because we don't have mileage there to kind of tell us how big the wind field is. But hopefully we can get that as we get a little bit closer. So here's a look here at the Ensemble Models, and these have tightened up a little bit. Obviously, you still have outliers over here and outliers over here, but the majority are clustered right around where the track is forecast to come in, right? So that has certainly, remember originally we had them all over the place, right? They were going east and west. So we've tightened this up now, and it looks like this is going to be somewhere in there, although you can still have some, a little bit of deviation there at the end. It's looking more and more like that's where we're going to see it. And of course, we all know about the bathtub it's moving into, right? I mean, we're talking 85, 86 degree temperatures, and even closer to the coast here, we're looking at like 87, 88, 89 degrees. So that's why I was saying, and then there's a loop current or an eddy in here that's going to move into where it's, there it is. That's the one I wanted to show you. So there's a track, right? And then there's that warm oceanic content, and it's going to, right now, we're already dealing with the storm right here. And the thing I wanted to check earlier, remember, the National Hurricane Center, and this is something that we got to keep an eye on, at 1 a.m. earlier, they said at 1 a.m. tonight it would be at 110 miles per hour. And I thought that was kind of ambitious, and I mentioned that earlier. Right now it's at 80, and so for it to get to 110 by 1 a.m., I just don't see that happening. So that's a little encouraging from earlier, but still, with that said, they still do have this getting up to 140 miles per hour. So we'll see what happens by 1. We'll see if it does increase. I would just think going from 80 to 110 miles per hour in 3 hours, that's just not going to happen. But I guess we'll see. I've seen stranger things in the tropics before, right? All right, so there's a look at the wide view of Ida there coming off of Cuba, and of course making its way in toward the Gulf of Mexico. All right, let's see what's going on here on the on the questions. If we have, let's see, a lot of comments here. Let's see what's going on. How's Kennebra going to look? That's a good question, Kevin. I'm worried about it. I'm worried about this area only because, look, we rarely get, because even with Zeta last year, we were kind of we were close to the Eyewall, but it was weakened at that point. It was, and we ended up west of the Eyewall. So, but this one's going to be a stronger storm versus what Zeta was. And one of the main things I'm going to tell you, the big difference. I looked back, by the way, at Zeta last year, and Zeta was coming in at 24 miles per hour. It was fast. That's a fast motion for a storm. It was coming in at 24 miles per hour. This one looks like it's going to be slowing down at landfall. If you look at the projection, they have it moving at 10 at landfall. So that's less, right? That's more than half the speed of what Zeta was coming in at. So big differences between this and Zeta. Please don't make a decision if you stayed for Zeta last year and were okay. That's not what you make your decision on with this one. This is going to be different because a lot of folks who were on the western side for Zeta last year, and Zeta was a weakening storm as well a little bit, right? It wasn't very well developed at landfall. This one looks like it could be. This one could be a category 4, and a lot of areas are going to be on the eastern side of this versus who are on the western side for Zeta. So please don't make decisions based on if you did okay for Zeta. And really don't make decisions on if you did okay with any storm in the past, because each storm is different. And this one could be stronger than anything we've seen coming in this area, right? I don't recall any other storm that has the potential to be this strong coming in from this trajectory. The only one that was potentially like this was Gustav back in 2008, which was kind of a similar track, but that ended up being a 2 at landfall, and it still created big problems across the area. So something to keep in mind there, right? It's not, don't ever judge past storms with making a decision for current storms, because I'm telling you, they are all different when it comes to impacts. I don't know if it'll be stronger, Marie. I mean, look, if we got a Cat 4 at this point, Cat 4 is strong enough. If it's 140 gusting to 165, I think the big difference I was trying to stress is Zeta came in and out, right? 24 miles per hour. It zoomed out. Now, this one, if it's coming in at 10, I mean, it's going to take its time. So the onshore push of water is longer. The winds are longer, right? I mean, you have winds for a few minutes with Zeta as it came through, but if this is a persistent wind, wind knocks at things for a while, and things can, withstand it for a little while. But if you got the winds that are hitting at a longer time, well, things give, right, over longer periods of time. So the speed that it's coming in at is, definitely concerning. And I know Brandy here joining, tonight. Brandy, I hope you made the preparations. I think you probably know by now that those preparations had to be made. And I know this makes you sick, this track here, because I know where you live. And, the water rise potential down there for you. So certainly something that we got to keep an eye on for this, and definitely hope for the best down there in that area. So again, Zeta is not like this one. This is a different with Zeta. Zeta was also around Halloween. This is around, one of the worst weeks as far as hurricanes go. This is that week that has some of the worst hurricanes in history. So something to keep in mind there. Kayla, I have someone getting less worried for Baton Rouge area because the track shows a significant decrease in intensity by the time it gets here. So here's the thing about Baton Rouge, right? I mean, it could still get, obviously that far inland, it's going to decrease in intensity as it gets there. It still could be 70 gusting to 85. That's north of Baton Rouge. So honestly, through Baton Rouge at this point, I mean, it could actually still be at a hurricane at that point, right? 4 to a 1. I mean, it'd still be there. There's going to be probably power outages that happen up there. I mean, maybe not widespread, but there's going to be power outages. So, I mean, if I was in Baton Rouge, it's far enough north, right, away from the water. The only things I would worry about, maybe obviously power outages, down trees, down power lines, with the winds, with the rain too is going to be a concern there. So, I mean, I'd probably actually, if I lived in Baton Rouge, I mean, I would probably stay because of the fact that it'll be a little bit weaker by that point. But with that in mind, the power outages could happen. And so it might be uncomfortable for a little while after this. So tough decisions everywhere, right? I mean, I get a lot of questions about, evacuations and how is it going to be around my area. And I got to tell you, those are hard to answer because, I mean, like, sometimes people will leave and maybe it's not as bad as it could have been around their area, and they're like, oh, we shouldn't have left. So yeah, I mean, that's why it's really your decision. I mean, if you don't feel comfortable and you want to get your family out of it, you want to get yourself, your family out of there, I mean, make the decision and go. And then trying to forecast specific areas is also difficult, because, I mean, I can give a broad kind of answer of, obviously we'll see, hurricane force winds in some areas, there'll be a lot of rainfall, but it's so hard to get down detailed for each particular area. That's why I kind of do a broad overview, and you can kind of see where you live to kind of get the idea of, what you're going to see. Like Danielle asking about Kenner, I mean, we look at, we look at Kenner, and in the current track, we're going to have the eastern side of the, the storm. We're going to have nasty rain bands, gusty winds, power outages likely, flooding rains are going to be likely, tornado threats. So it's just not fun at all, right? I mean, it's not going to be a good few hours. So, and then and then the fact that it could be a Category 4, at least, right, at landfall. Somebody asked about Gustav. It's not exact, but I mean, that was Gustav's track. So, I mean, it's close, right? It's close. Look how Gustav's coming off the coast of Cuba there, and how it moves to the west, right around the same scenario, right around the high. It ends up bending a little bit to the west. The only difference here from this and Gustav back in 2008 is the way it came in toward the end, where Gustav did not bend north. It kind of came in northwest and then bent way up here. This one's going to be bending and going north here. So yeah, I mean, there's obviously differences. No, no two tracks are the same, but there are some similarities between the current track and how it's kind of coming in a little bit. So certainly some similarities there, though. All right, let's see what we have here. No, Michael says our soil is moist and sandy in Gulfport. Big trees are going down. Hasn't stopped raining here in months. Yeah, well, they have some rain from this one, obviously, and yeah, that could be an issue with this, right? More rain and then the wind coming in behind it. I mean, you could board up the windows, Jenna, just as a precaution. That's really, really up to you if you feel like you want to do that just to be safe. I mean, remember, you could have in those bands you could have those quickly spawned tornadoes that come down. You just never know. I mean, if you want to be, if you want to take extra precaution there, certainly, you could board up the windows just to be on the safe side. It's so hard to, because I know folks ask the gut feeling stays the track or moves east or west. It's really hard, but what I would say is, at the end of the forecast, when you get closer to landfall, there are some little things that can happen there, toward the end, and we can see little shifts. I would say, if I were to, pick, if a more likely scenario would be east versus west, I think a more likely scenario right now for me would be that it would go a little bit more to the west. With a faster motion, it would go a little bit more west. If it does slow down a little bit, then that would allow that high to bump east, and we'd see a motion to the east. Now, what could happen is when you get to the very last moments at landfall in the last few hours, we've seen this with storms in the past, whether it's the interaction with, landfall and friction with the land as it's coming in. Sometimes that kind of starts to pull it a little bit north and east, more so, than it would normally. So that usually happens in like the very last few hours. Sometimes we've seen it with storms in the past. We saw it with Sally. We saw it with Charlie back in '04. These things, Sally came in way east of where it was supposed to. Charlie came in way south and east of where it was supposed to. So we've seen these things happen in the past, but again, you can't really predict that, and it happens in the last few hours sometimes. So we gotta watch for that though, and that's some of those little tricky things that can happen toward the end. The atmosphere is very moist, Jamie. The atmosphere is very moist. And here's your proof there, right? If you look at remember, this is that upper level low we've been tracking over the last few days. Here it is right here, right? It's not very vigorous at all, right? I mean, I was hoping that was going to, create some shear on it. But at this point, remember what I told you earlier. And here's, by the way, this is a hurricane or a storm. I'm not sure if it's a hurricane or not. It might be a tropical storm down there in the Eastern Pacific. And that's creating a little bit of outflow here. And, something else that we were kind of looking at is maybe some of this creating some shear in the Gulf. But with this upper low here and with this storm as well, you can see the nice outflow from this. I was talking about that earlier. You get the fanning in the upper levels where you actually have clockwise sort of rotation that happens in the upper levels with these storms. And that's what we're seeing with this. It almost creates its own barrier when that starts to happen. So even if this would get close to it, this kind of shields itself from really being affected to it, right? So you can almost see itself creating its own barrier here as that outflow happens in the upper level. So it really protects itself almost. These things are kind of alive, right? So it really creates itself. And so like once these things get well developed, that's why shear affects systems that are in the developmental stage more than when they actually are formed, because they create themselves their own shields and their own protection basically in the upper levels. And so that's why this thing was struggling the other day with that southwest shear. We saw Fred, we saw a bunch of systems when they're trying to develop, shear impacts them a lot more. They don't have a protective shield yet, right? But with this one, I mean, you can almost see it happening, right? You have this outflow here, we have this upper level low, have a little bit of shear like that, but this thing is becoming wispy in the upper levels. And, so what you get a lot of times is the clockwise flow in the upper levels, and of course the counterclockwise flow in the lower levels. And that's when you know that you have a potent hurricane setting up. Look at any satellite from the past. Look at any satellite from the past. And from any potent hurricane, and you'll see the low level rotation and you'll see the fanning in the upper levels, right? It's pretty cool to look at. You don't like to see it because that means you're going to have a powerful hurricane, but I'm already seeing that setting up here on the satellite. I'm really just seeing it tonight, this side, because all day and the last couple of days, this upper low was really shearing this off. But now I'm seeing this wispy stuff developing in the upper levels all along here. And that's telling me that this thing is starting to, get its act together. So, yeah. So something to look at there as we go forward, right? This thing really is going to, it almost creates its own environment. In the Gulf, it almost creates its own environment and basically has free will to do it at once it gets there. And it's there now, and it's only going to be moving into a more conducive environment. This whole area here is very warm, and even warmer in that little, loop current. All right, so there's a look here at, let's see what else we have going on here. Oh, Lord, David, you're correcting Mark. It looks like, but I'll give her the benefit of the doubt. The map looked like it was, it looked like it decreased it to a 3 at landfall, but because I saw that too and it confused me a little bit. So I just went into the National Hurricane Center discussion and kind of saw what was going on there. And, what I noticed, like I told you, was that last point, they actually had it inland. There it is. And so every time they have a storm inland, of course, they decrease it. Now, I don't like that they do that. I always say, no matter where the storm is located, they should always have the point right at landfall before it moves inland to show us what the landfall intensity will be. But that's not what happened here. They put 140, and I think we need to assume it's going to still be 140, 135. So it's going to be a Cat 4, I would say, at landfall still. Even if it would go 140 to 130, that's still a Cat 4 at landfall. But they had 125, but that was inland. That was after it weakened a little bit. And so it looked like it was a 3 at landfall, but I really still think it's actually a 4 at landfall. In case y'all joined late, that's something that I kind of clarified there. It still looked like it was going to be a 4 at landfall. Yeah, it's a big one, Phil. Good to see you on here. Definitely a big one. Could have some bands going in your direction over there, even in Central Florida. Yeah, David, you're probably fighting a losing battle there, honestly. Oh, Lord. Yeah, thank the linemen, y'all. They got all the linemen going out there. All the essential workers, the first responders, everyone, hard workers coming in here. Linemen, they got their work cut out for them in the next few days. So certainly think about them. Say a prayer for them as well. David said, my neighbor who is a supervisor for energy said all major energy companies said it would be 18 days minimum before we have power in the South Shore and North Shore. Wow. Yeah, I hope that's not the case. I hope that's an overestimation. Geez. Brandy, that's a good point. Thanks for reminding me, because obviously my mind is all over the place. Eyewall replacement may be something that may save us a little bit. As this thing gets into the Gulf, it rids itself of Cuba. We're going to start to see this thing intensifying and really kind of blowing up. Sometimes, and they're unpredictable, there's no way to know when it might happen, but sometimes you go through an eyewall replacement where the eyewall actually becomes, it starts small a lot of times, but then it goes through replacement, actually becomes a larger eye. Sometimes the winds will go down a little bit, but then the expanse of the actual wind field gets larger. So something to watch for. Sometimes it can, I don't want to say weaken, but we'll probably have a time of rapid intensification for this. And then sometimes it can be stopped by an eyewall replacement cycle where it might not weaken, but at least it'll slow down the rapid intensification. But then unfortunately, the wind field does expand with that. So, after that's all said and done, it's not the best thing for it, but sometimes it can at least slow down the intensification for at least a little while. Let's see. What about the North Shore? North Shore impacts, right? I'll put back this up. I know everybody's not here for the entire time, but this is again, it's going to depend exactly where it comes in. It's going to depend on what this thing looks like and how strong it is. But this is it shows you the blue there is the cone around it. And this shows the purple area is the area that has a chance to see Category 3 or more. Would be the areas in purple, right? 110 miles per hour or more. And that could come in the form of wind gust or sustained winds, right? If we're going to see the highest winds are going to be in the purple area. On the North Shore, you have the chance to see Category 1 and 2 force winds still. Maybe it'll be just wind gust. Probably more likely just the wind gust there. And that's that red area. And then the orange is going to be the chance to see high tropical storm force winds to just below Category 1 hurricane strength. That's the orange area. And then the yellow is going to just be really just mid-grade tropical storm. As this thing moves north, it'll still have some winds with it. The rainfall threat is the most prevalent thing once it starts to move in that direction. So keep that in mind. That's the area. So winds on the North Shore, absolutely, especially because it's going to be moving north and then bending in your direction. Rainfall on the eastern side, flash flooding threat, power line, trees down, potentially. Lots of different things, right? None of them really that good. Tornado threat as well. So, yeah, anything east of where the center comes in, this still applies to you, especially the more south you are. You got the center coming in somewhere like this, right? It's close enough. I don't know if that's exact, but it's close enough, and we'll just say that's where it is, right? It's close to that. So east of that line, and even west, by the way, maybe not as bad, but like I was saying before, we're talking classic buzzsaw hurricane, okay? If I have to show you again of what it could look like, this is what it could look like as it's making its way in, all right? So keep that up for a minute and kind of see what the orientation would be like. Is it a little bit west, a little bit east? I don't know, but pay attention to what the presentation of the storm is going to be like. We're talking about a full-size hurricane with that classic donut buzzsaw with the storms wrapping all the way around. And so at this point, you got stuff on the west, you got stuff in the east, you got stuff to the north here. A lot of impacts on each side of it. So yeah, so keep that in mind with this, okay? So like it's not just going to be an eastern thing, even though I think the worst impacts are obviously always going to be on the east and the northeast side of that quadrant as it spins around. Impact's going to be felt, way outside of the center. Phil, not sure yet. I mean, I don't know if we're staying behind for this one. I really don't. We have a couple of places booked, and we'll cancel them if we don't go. But we'll make our decision. But I think I'll make a decision. We're going to make a decision tomorrow, probably in the afternoon. I know there's going to be a lot of traffic. So I know what's going to happen, as I already told you it's going to happen, is tomorrow folks are going to probably see a satellite that looks something like, this or this, and they're going to say, okay, we're this thing's blowing up. We're not going to stay behind. I think people maybe still skeptical a little bit. Some, not all, but some are probably still skeptical. Like, they say this all the time. It never happens. But I think when they start to see the satellite and what it's going to look like, they may say, okay, let's get the heck out of here. So I'm guessing a lot of people are probably waiting until tomorrow as well. And they'll be getting out of here. So I'm hoping the traffic won't be horrible. Probably will be. But we'll make a decision tomorrow and see what we're going to do. Thank you, Nita. Appreciate that. Really do. Thanks, Jordan. Yeah, I see y'all talking about hospitals and all. I have no idea how all that, the logistics of all that. That's just, yeah. No, Jim, I don't. Can it make strong enough to make its own high and push more west? Now, I mean, if it's a faster motion, it would go more to the west, right? We got to see the slowdown, right? The speed is never exact, but if it's a faster motion, it's gonna ride along that high before it has a chance to kind of be weakened by that trough that's going to be dipping down. If it's a slower motion, I think we have more of a chance toward the end to see a little bit of an eastern shift. So we'll see what happens as we go in. There's going to be a dipping trough that's going to kind of try to weaken that high. And so the faster this thing goes, the more west I think we're going to see it. If we get more of a slowdown toward the end, I think we'll see tracks start to bend a little bit more to the east. But again, this stuff's going to happen late in the game. It's not going to be something where we can say right now. Because if you look at the forecast models, and I know this is not ideal, but if you look at the forecast tracks, they are very tight, like really all through here, right? They start to diverge a little bit, but the real divergence doesn't come till the end here in the last 24 hours or so. So that becomes a bit of an issue there where, pretty much have it down over the next day or so. But there's a little bit of spread toward the end. But the cluster of them are still centered around where the National Hurricane Center has the landfall happening. So, yeah, something to keep in mind there about the potential for shifts toward the end, right? Lori, look, I'm, good point about Houma, Thibodaux, Morgan City area, right? I guess the best answer I have for you is, like I said earlier, I don't know the impact that we're going to see. Obviously, we're going to see a significant impact here, right? If the center comes in down here, where it's forecast to come in, then that'll keep these areas down here, right? Let's just say the center's here, and let's say it's a Category 4 strong 3 once it makes itself inland. And that's close, obviously, to Thibodeau, Home, all these areas down here. I mean, that's going to still put that onshore flow here. So I guess, and this is kind of what I said before, and I don't know if you were here for this or not, they do predict 10 to 15 feet of water rise. And you know how the geography is down there, right? I mean, there's barely coastal. We're losing coast like crazy. So what I said before is that a storm coming in from this trajectory, from the south like this, and bending like that, however it's going to come in, right? I mean, how is it? It's like something like this. This is the first storm that I've seen coming in from this trajectory that I can remember that's forecast to be this strong. So, I mean, I think I think the scary part about it is we don't know how a lot of these areas are going to fare. So how far does the water come in? I mean, you know darn well down there in that area, there's a lot of different bayous and all kinds of different waterways, and there's ways for the water to get in. And so I don't know. All I can say is that the water is going to rise down there close to the coast. There's going to be a lot of rain falling, also just adding to it. And then there's going to be the wind threat. So there's at least 3 things going against y'all in those areas down there. So I mean, I personally down there to the south, I would not stick around for this one down there close to the center like that. But obviously, y'all got to make decisions for your family. But this is a different beast. It has the potential to be a different beast, and one that we have not seen before coming in from this area, from this angle of attack, so to speak, with surge coming in kind of south to north, right? I mean, if you look at the hurricanes of the past, they were kind of coming in from different directions, and the surge was coming in from a different direction. This is more south to north, and I don't know how the water is going to push in and how the Louisiana coastline can handle it and where it's going to go and which waterway it's going to come into. I just don't know exactly. But we know there's going to be water rise, and we know there's going to be a potential for flash flooding. So certainly something to monitor as we get closer, and you just got to make the best decision. But I can tell you, I mean, I personally, in that area down there, I don't think I would stay down there with what we could be looking at. Yeah, y'all seem like y'all fighting a little bit. I don't know what's going on. Let's not fight on Tropics After Dark. Come on now. What are we fighting about here? Tiffany, I really don't know exactly. I'm gonna be honest with you. I got to find out that information. I do not know how wide it is right now. It's obviously not very wide at this point. You can see it right there on the satellite, but it is going to expand as we go into tomorrow and early on Sunday. So it is certainly going to expand, and if we go through an eyewall replacement, the wind field will expand also. But I really don't exactly know the width of it, but I can tell you at this point it's not very wide, but it's going to get wide, and I can already see the formation of this thing taking shape right now, and it's primed and ready. Once that thing gets off, you see how half of it's on Cuba right there, the southeast portion of the storm is still on Cuba. Once it rids itself of that and gets itself totally into the Gulf, that's when we're going to see this thing start to materialize. It's not quite yet, but it's coming. Phil, yeah, you think it's about 500 to 550. It's possible, right? I mean, are we talking like just the core or like the entire span of the storm there stretching like over into Florida there? I mean, it probably, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I really don't know. I'm going to be honest with you. The thing is, Kathy, down there in Chauvin, I don't know the geography exactly in all these areas, right? I mean, I try my best to give y'all some different forecasts and try my best, I don't know the exact geography and how high the levees are and where they're located, but I can tell you that 10 to 15 feet of water rise is expected close to the coast. And with the rainfall, there, I don't know. I mean, how did you do in storms past? But again, this one's different, coming in from a different angle of angle of attack, so to speak. So it's hard for me to say about potential topping of levees in Chauvin. I mean, there's no way I can say yes or no it's going to happen. But I mean, if there's a risk for it, and that's a worry, and I don't know. Obviously, if there's officials in that area talking about this potentially overtopping the levees, then I would certainly listen to them if they're saying that this could overtop the levees and that's going to be a threat to property down there. I would certainly listen, but I just don't know the exact geography and what we're dealing with down there. Oh, that's good to hear, Brandy. I'm glad you got everything taken care of. Which direction would I recommend people evacuate? I think if you go west, you know, I, it depends on your, like, if you want to be totally away from it, like nothing, no weather at all. I mean, you got to really get to like Beaumont, Houston area. Not going to receive much at all there. Even like Lake Charles may get some bands, right? West, maybe not even that far, but westward, you're going Beaumont, Houston. Eastward, I would say probably, like, I think you'd be okay in like Pensacola. You'd probably still have some impacts from it. I think you really got to go like Fort Walton, Panama City, eastward, Tallahassee. And even there, you probably still see some bans, but life-threatening conditions over there or things that are, very hazardous in that area, those are lessened, obviously, when you go that far to the east. I would not go north. I would not go northeast. If you go northwest, it just depends on how far, because this thing is going to be hooking north and east. So I would go northwest far enough, Alexandria probably, and westward, and obviously Beaumont, Houston, Panama City, Fort Walton, eastward in that direction. But I would not go north or northeast because that's where the storm's going to be moving. So, yeah. Lake Charles looks decent right now, Heather. I know you're just logging on. I mean, I don't think anything horrible is going to happen on the current track right now. Obviously, you might still feel this tropical storm across the area, but I think you'll be safe over there in Lake Charles. If you want to go to Houston, yeah, I mean, Houston would obviously be a better choice, right? As far as like receiving basically no impact from it. But I do think on its current course, you'd be safe in Lake Charles. Yeah, how is the traffic right now? Anybody in it, or anybody on their phone in traffic right now, or how did it look today? I mean, anybody have any um, outlook on that? There probably are some high tensions, by the way. I see that there's some people arguing. Let's not argue, but yeah, I mean, look, tensions are high, anxiety's high. I mean, I'm anxious too, right? I'm anxious too. It's just how it is, right? Anytime there's a storm in the Gulf and it's going to probably be bad, there's anxiety, and we know there's going to be impacts to neighbors and myself potentially. So there's definitely some anxiety there, and I know things can get nerve wracking, and it's okay. It's just let's not fight during tropics after dark. I mean, that should be a rule: no fighting in here. Um, but whatever, y'all can do you. Dina D. I don't know if I'm staying. Like I said, I'll make a decision tomorrow. hopefully. I'm a little nervous about traffic, but we'll see. We'll see. Polly, what am I looking for in a 2 a.m. update or the 1 a.m. update from the National Hurricane Center will come. Remember, they had, by the way, we'll look at the GFS, by the way. It's going to be late enough now. We can take a look at the new GFS as that's kind of trickling in a little bit. Let's see what's going on. This is the new one. I have not seen this. I'm seeing this for the first time with you. So let's see what happens. Let's go to the zoom in view. All right, so there we go. Coming off Cuba. Let's see what the new GFS is looking at here. Comes up. Do we have enough? Yeah, okay. Strengthening. Yeah, maybe. Well, maybe a little more west. Hard to tell, right? Maybe a little more west than it was. I mean, we've seen flipping and flopping a little bit with each model run, so it's close. I mean, it's close to where it was, but maybe it's a little slightly more west, right? I don't know. It's hard to tell. I think it is a little bit more west, though. It's hard to tell, though. I assume this is still going to look intimidating. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, well, that's a look at potentially we could look at. And that is around, yeah, still Sunday evening. Still looking at Sunday evening. So it's going to evolve quickly, by the way. I mean, it's tomorrow's Saturday, right? Already. Landfall Sunday. So it's not, this one did not provide us with a lot of time. Polly, at 1 a.m. update, I'll be looking for just the winds. I want to see if it's doing anything, see if it's strengthening a little bit. Remember earlier at 4 p.m. I had talked about how the National Hurricane Center said it would be at 110 miles per hour at 1 a.m. And I kind of said that's ambitious because it's going to be coming off of Cuba. And for them to think it was going to be 30 miles per hour more than it was currently, I just thought, I don't know if it's going to happen. So I'll be shocked if it's 110 by 1 a.m. That would not be good if it's 110. That would, if it rapidly intensifies to a Cat 2 at that point, almost a Cat 3, that's not going to be good. But let me tell y'all and give you all some encouragement. I do not think it's going to be 110 miles per hour at, at 1 o'clock. But I'll update you on that. It was 80 coming off of Cuba. I'll be looking at a couple of things. The pressure was, what was the pressure at the 10 p.m. update? It was at 989. So yeah, it went up a little bit. The pressure went up obviously over the land. It weakened a little bit. So 989 pressure, 80 mile per hour wind at 10 p.m. And so what I'll be looking at 1 a.m. are two things. Obviously the wind speeds, do they stay at 80 or do they decrease? Do they increase? But I want to really look at the pressure. It's 989 at 10 p.m. Let's see what the pressure's doing. If it's already starting to drop again, well then that tells us the storm is repairing itself for whatever happened as it moved over Cuba. So I'll be looking at those two things there. Oh, that's a good idea, Phil. The radar scope measurement tool is a good idea, and I never thought to use that. So here's another question, Carol, about the news. The news just said it was going to drop down to a Cat 3. What do you think about that? Well, what I explained earlier is, the news was talking about it dropping down to a Cat 3 at landfall, but it really wasn't dropping down to a Cat 3 at landfall, because if you zoom in a little bit and do a little bit of digging, what you'll see is that the 3 point right here is actually inland a little bit after making landfall and it weakening to 125. Keep in mind, 125 at that point is still a strong Cat 3 and nearly a Cat 4 still. But my point I was trying to make is that that point is inland, and I confirmed it from the National Hurricane Center here on their thing. You see the point before that at 140, but the 125 one is marked as inland. So they decrease it because of landfall. It's not decreasing to decrease because of whatever. It's still, I think, if it's 140, it's going to still be a Category 4 at landfall. 130 or above is Category 4. The only reason it's down to a 3 is because it is making landfall and it weakened a little bit. Okay, so something to just think about there. that's I don't want anybody to get complacent on this. If the television stations are saying it's going to drop down to a 3 at landfall, it's not the case. It's just the point that's inland a little bit. I wish the National Hurricane Center wouldn't do that, but that's another argument for another day. I want them to have a point right before landfall to see what it's going to be at landfall, but that's they don't do that. Yeah, not a bad idea, right, Brandy? Go take a look at those places down there, because I don't know every area down there, obviously. Joe's here. Cue the Jaws theme. Just moved here from California. I'm ready to go home. Oh man, just moved from California. Welcome here, right? What a welcome. Jeez. Tommy in Baton Rouge, I mean, you can expect tropical storm force conditions at a minimum, the potential to see hurricane force winds even that far inland. Lot of rainfall, potential for power lines and trees to be down. Power outages are going to be possible. So certainly some impacts there around the Baton Rouge area. Yeah, the traffic makes me nervous. I remember leaving for Katrina. We left the Saturday before it made landfall on that Sunday. What's the deal with these storms making landfall on a Sunday, by the way, on August 29th too, but whatever. Yeah, traffic was horrible. We sat in that for a while. Same thing for Ivan. We actually left here for Ivan as well. Whoops. And traffic was bad. So I'm a little nervous about that, obviously. Traffic was heavy to Lake Charles. Took us 5 hours. What is it usually? Heather, did you go from... You were leaving from New Orleans area? Or because normally it's what, about 3 hours from New Orleans to Lake Charles, so about a 2 hour delay. If that's where you were, I'm not sure if that's where you went from or not. Melissa says it left tonight around 7. Heading to Mobile and the traffic was thick. How long did it take, Melissa, if you left around 7 to Mobile? What time did you get there? Mobile from if you're leaving from New Orleans is usually what, about 2 hours or so, 2.5 hours, 2:15. Yeah, keep watching over there, Monica, in Vermilion Bay area. Any trends I've seen from the models in the last day or so have been west more so than shifting east. So if we're looking at trends, and if we were looking at a scenario that might be more likely to see, it would be a shift west, I think. Not saying that's going to happen, but I would say around Vermilion Bay is where some of the models have shown it to be going. The European model specifically is a little bit more to the west, and even the GFS that we just saw was a little bit more to the west. So I'm not saying that we're going to see a shift west, but I would say if we're going to see a shift versus east versus west, I think a west one might happen, more so than an east one. But we'll just have to wait and see. There's still a little ways to go here with this. Pam, that's a good point. I remember that guy that wouldn't give me a break on the rain amount for New Jersey. Man, that was funny. Was that this season or last? I don't even remember. I think it was early this season, wasn't it? Yeah, look, there's not Edward says that the Weather Channel just said a high 4. Let me put on. I have the Weather Channel over here. Just like to have them see what they're doing over there. So they're actually showing weather now. Or is the Weather Channel actually showing weather now? That's shocking. No, they usually don't. I'm surprised Highway to Hell or Mud Truckers isn't on right now. We're actually tracking Ida. Are they playing that song? Man, that song from 2017. I remember it so much during Harvey. That song they play during the commercial breaks. Man, that thing will get stuck in your head. It actually grew on me a little bit. I had it as my ringtone for a little while back in 2017. I assume they're playing that song again. All right, let's see. Yeah, so the Weather Channel just said a high 4, and it is possible that we see a high 4 with this. Right now they're forecasting 140. That would be a mid-grade 4, right? 156 or 157 or above would be a Cat 5. So it's closer to the low end of a Cat 4. 140 is Cat 4 to 157. So, certainly would be a possibility there to see a higher end Category 4. Remember, we've had storms recently, Laura from last year, Michael, even Katrina. Even going back a few times, the National Hurricane Center rarely forecast Category 5s. They just don't do it a lot for whatever reason. A lot of times they correct themselves as it's coming in, and they're like, okay, this thing's at like 150. It's probably going to get to 160 at this point, and then the forecast happens for Category 5. They rarely do it this early, but the fact that they went up to Category 4 at this point is kind of, they're usually a little more conservative than that. So that actually surprised me earlier when they went up to Category 4. So we'll see what happens. It could overachieve still. So we'll see. I don't even like the only thing I look for when I look at models is there's Carl Parker's on they're actually showing weather on the Weather Channel. How about that? The only thing I look for when I look at models a lot of times is I don't look exactly for the for the intensity. What I look for is all the models intensifying this thing into a potent hurricane, and that's all I want to know. So that tells me that the environment's good and all the models are kind of seeing the same thing. As far as trying to predict what the intensity is going to be, that's impossible still. It's not something that we can do. It's not something that the National Hurricane Center can do. They would probably admit that that's one of the toughest things for them still, is trying to nail down the intensity forecast. Batteries in this darn control. Piece of crap. Need to put new batteries in there. So certainly could easily get to 140, and it could could even get higher potentially. Carla, it is in the Gulf now. There's a look at the satellite. You can see it coming off of Cuba there to the northwest. In fact, you can see in the very last portion of the loop there, some of that convection around the northwest portion of the center starting to fire again. So maybe that's an indication that it's starting to strengthen a bit. Remember, I kind of said that you see that the inflow part of the storm there is still kind of on the island. And just to kind of point out what I'm talking about here, this little portion of the storm here, right here on this side, it's kind of still across portion of Cuba here. So once it rids itself totally off of that and the entire storm is off the island and in the water, I think at that point is when we start to see the intensification start to happen. Although it could start right now a little bit, it's not going to truly materialize until the thing's over water totally and free of the landmass there. So we'll watch for that. Yeah, I remember the days when I remember the days in the Weather Channel when they were I assume I haven't watched this in a while, honestly. But when they back in the day for, I think it was Ike, when Mike Bettis, he was in the he was in Fell in the Bushes. I don't know, I'm sure you'll probably remember that during Ike. Did they go out there in the storms anymore, like during the actual heat of the storms, and get knocked over and all? I mean, I'm sure some of it's kind of fake sometimes, but I assume they still do that. But I used to like watching that back when a few years ago, several years ago now. What, Ike was 13 years ago now? Jeez, is that Ike 2008, right? Gustav and Ike were the same year, I think. Thanks, Duncan. I appreciate that, man. I think they said it's too late for contraflow. I know New Orleans said it was too late for contraflow, as if we hadn't been talking about this for a few days, right? We thought they would have some time to have some preparation there. Pretty sure they did in one day for Katrina, right? I think for on that Friday when we knew the hell was about to break loose for Katrina, I'm pretty sure they put it in effect for the next day. So I'm not sure why they. I don't know the logistics of it. I'm not going to say anything, but I think they did it for one day. 1 day in advance for for Katrina back in 05. So I'm not sure why they couldn't do it for this one, but who knows? I'm not going to question it. I mean, I kind of question it, but I'm not going to question it anymore. Ivan took 17 hours to get to Dallas. Wow. Where were you going from, Polly? That's crazy. Okay, so Melissa said she left here at 7, right? Melissa said she left here at 7 and went to Mobile and got there at 10. That's not too bad, right? It's a little bit of traffic. Took about an extra hour or so, maybe 45 minutes to an hour or so, but yeah. Phil, the latest GFS. This was the latest That's the latest GFS run right there. Landfall. It didn't maybe shifted a little west. Hard to tell. But you still see the potential for this thing to be massive at Landfall. That's the latest GFS right there. Oh, was it last season, Pam? The guy from New Jersey. Shows you how long the time is. I really thought that was this season. Man, this has the potential to be worse than Gustav in Baton Rouge, Duncan. It really does. It has the potential to be worse than Gustav. And I remember when I worked in Baton Rouge, folks telling me that Gustav was basically their Katrina. That was the storm for them. So certainly has a chance to be like that. Yeah, Polly, the schedule for the National Hurricane Center is 10 p.m. They have the cone that just came out. That's the one we started this on. And then 1 a.m. they'll have another advisory for winds and pressure, just basically just a stats update. And then at 4 a.m. they'll have a new cone, more stats, and then it just goes 4, 7, 10. But you get every 6 hours, you get the new cone and new stats, and every other 6 hours, right, the 7 and 1, you just get stats. And then I think as you get closer to landfall, you get every couple hours or so. I don't even know the exact schedule once you get it every couple hours. Oh, you're a little boned, Drew. a little boned over there in Baton Rouge, right? The potential to see hurricane force winds, rainfall, power outages. Yeah, I mean, there's going to be all kinds of things. Because remember, it's going to be hooking north towards your area. Oh, wow, Jeff Morrow's still in the Weather Channel. I had no idea. I met him also in person with Jim Cantori. He was cool. He's a nice guy. I didn't think he was on there still. Let's see. Watch the channel. Yeah, I'm scrolling through the comments, by the way. I'm behind still. I'm trying to catch up a little bit. Where's Jim Cantori? He's in he's in New Orleans. Great. Always wonderful. Let's see. Lost power for 2 weeks after Gustav. Yeah, that's serious. That's miserable. Big impacts coming for the West Bank, most likely, Lou Jack. Yeah, certainly going to see some impacts in the West Bank. Big winds, lots of rain, power outages likely. Where's that Reynolds? Oh, Reynolds Wolf is in New Orleans too. They sent the big guns here. No, Polly, we'll see. So we'll see. So the GFS just came out at midnight, or right now, a little early, but that's really the midnight model. And then there'll be a new Euro at 1 a.m., and there'll be a new model suite, I like to call it, at 2 a.m. And between there, you get the advisory at 1 a.m. So, yeah. 2 a.m., you'll see some new tracks and see if anything happened as far as shifting. Yeah, John Hope. I remember John Hope. I was young, but I remember John Hope. I also remember Steve Lyons. Remember Steve Lyons from the Weather Channel. He's not there. He's long gone too. Um, Steve Lyons and John Hope when I was a kid. Watched them growing up. Pretty big impacts on the West Bank, Tanya. Like I said, lots of rainfall, bunch of rainfall, maybe too much rainfall. Winds, you're going to be on the eastern side most likely of the center of circulation. Potential for flash flooding, power outages. It's Cat 4. It's going to be close enough where you see some pretty big impacts. I don't know, Drew. I might head out tomorrow. We're going to make a decision and see what's going on with this. But we might head out. Yeah, see, Weather Channel's still saying that Ida is likely to be a major Cat 4 at landfall. They're not falling for that 3 on the icon, right? You gotta just do a little bit of looking, right? You can't just, I mean, you can see that was actually, yeah. Still expecting a Cat 4 at landfall, by the way. Thanks, Katie. I appreciate that from Panama City up there, down there, east, whatever you call it. Beautiful area. Um, Bob Sheets. I don't remember Bob Sheets, Phil. I don't remember Bob Sheets. I remember John Hope. I do not remember Bob Sheets, though. Have to Google him. How you doing, Johnny from Biloxi? Did he really, David? He said it was a Cat 3 at landfall, too? Man. So, again, it seems like a lot of the local New Orleans meteorologists are saying it's going to be a Cat 3 at landfall. They still have it as a Cat 4 at landfall. That point is inland a little bit, and they weakened it. It's 125. After it makes landfall, it weakens a little bit. So at landfall, approaching the coast and making the actual landfall, it still looks like it's going to be a Category 4. After it moves in, that point that you're seeing on all the TV stations, because they just get those cones, right? I used to work in TV, and they just send in the cones. It comes straight from the Hurricane Center. So what you're seeing in the Hurricane Center is exactly what they're using on TV. And that point that the National Hurricane Center is using is just inland. But you really can't tell because they use those big icons on TV, and it looks like it's actually making landfall at that, but it's actually not. It's just inland and it's weakened a little bit. So we're still expecting a Category 4 landfall here with the weakening after landfall because it's on land. It's going to drop the winds a little bit. Even so, that point is 125. I mean, it's still a potent hurricane even on land for a few miles. Okay, so keep that in mind here. Don't start saying, oh, well, it's weakening now. It's not an issue. It's going to be a 3, and then it'll eventually go to a 2. No, it's not. That's not probably not going to be a case here. I can tell you that's not a 2 right there, and that's probably not even a 3. On that projection from the GFS there. So, yeah. Let's see here. David's boycotting all the local people. It's funny. All right. Let's see what we have going on here. Is there anything else to look at? I think I covered everything. I had a whole bunch of stuff open here. I don't think that was everything. Oh yeah, Bob was calling out. Bob was calling out the bloggers and kind of calling out like pages like this, right? About not following them and how you need to stick to reliable sources and all. I think that's what you were talking about, David. If I remember that, I think that was what we were talking about a few years ago, right? I think so, if I recall that. Let's see. Just who said I'm just getting on here? I'm just getting on. I've been at work. What's going on? Johnny. I don't know how much you saw from earlier. We're still expecting a Category 4 landfall across the Louisiana coast on Sunday evening. Looks like could be 140 ish, give or take. Could be higher. We'll see. Still expecting a Category 4 landfall and impacts greatly stretching out from the center. Storm surge, rainfall, winds all at the coast, and then stretching inland as well. Rainfall is going to drop to the north. All that's going to come back down. We got to check the river levels as well. So lots of things to watch with this, without a doubt. They had some haters on the page earlier when I posted that I thought this was going to at least be a 4. Man, they had some haters on there. They had some comments and they ended up deleting them because they look like let's just say they made a mistake. They were calling out the page. Whatever. Well, there you go. That's the latest on Ida tonight. There's a look at it. It's coming off of Cuba, and now it's got only Gulf. Once it gets rids itself off of Cuba a little bit, you can see some of that convection wrapping right there at the very end of the loop. But this has only water left, y'all, as it makes its way in. However it's going to go. I don't know. It's going to hook in somewhere around here. Yeah, a lot of water and a lot of heat content in there and low wind shear. So I don't know. Again, I don't think there's anything that's really going to stop this from blossoming into something that we just really don't want to see in the Gulf tomorrow. So keep an eye on it. Stay with the page, y'all. I appreciate you joining. Appreciate you joining tonight on here, this Tropics After Dark. Stay with the page. I'll update y'all on the model, the update for. And by the way, I haven't seen much from Wendy Tran. You remember Wendy Tran? She's the troll on the page. She never is on these lives, but I would think she's loving this track, right? We all know Wendy Tran, the troll, Trend Troll. Haven't seen her much comment on things. She must have fainted from this this possibility. I'm close to banning her, but I haven't seen her for a while. I was gonna say, look, if she was gonna start saying how much she loved this, I might have started banning her. But I have not. I have not seen her on there for a while. So stay with the page, y'all. I'll update y'all at 1 a.m. when the new advisory comes out from the National Hurricane Center. I'll update the Euro if it's anything different. And also the new model suite, which is a little bit more important. That'll be at 2 a.m. So thank you guys for joining tonight. And stay with the page. Tag some people in here if you want. Share the video. And thank you, floodproofing.com, for being our partner again this season. All right, y'all. Thank you for joining, and have a good rest of your night. Try to stay calm. I know it's hard. There's a lot of anxiety out there. All right, I'll talk to you.